Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of the Beat the Bookie podcast. I'm Alan Seslowski. I'm the host, and I'm here with the star of the show, John Alesia, aka Statsational. What's up, my friend?
What's going on, bud?
It's been a little bit since we had a Beat the Bookie podcast. Now that sports is back in full swing, hopefully we can get this going more on the regular. I've been the one question I've got more this quarantine is, when are you guys doing another Beat the Bookie podcast? I can't battle off the people quick enough. So today we are going to talk about a subject that I think every single person, doesn't matter who you are, if you're into sports, not into sports, but how to win your office pool. When you told me we were going to do this subject, John, I think my grandmother got excited.
Well, it's funny you say that. I used to get my grandmother, rest in peace. She used to like to participate in some of the pools I ran. I've been running office pools since high school. You know, starting with the NCAA pools and all through that. That was, as a side note, if you're a young guy, girl, and you're just starting out, maybe as an intern or something like that at a big company, that's a great way to get to know everybody in the company. Is start running an office pool. When I first started on Wall Street as an intern, and I'll date myself a little bit. This was like the pre having internet at your desk days. This is like the early 90s, 93, 94. So I would run the NCAA pools and the football pools in the office. So I'd only be there maybe a couple of times a week or something like that. I would be in the office, but you'd run the pools, and I mean, you had everyone from the people in the mailroom back when we had a mailroom, and all the way up to the CEO of the company would be in the pool. So it's a great way, as you know, most interns, you're going to sit kind of at your desk and do whatever jobs they want you to do in your department. It's real tough to get a face to face with maybe the CEO if you're in a big company, but start running an office pool, and like you said, everybody wants to jump in on it.
You know, it's funny you say that. So when I was doing entry level, maybe a slightly above entry level work at CBS, I was I was a peon over there in their sales department, and me along with a couple other guys, we ran the NCAA pool. And we did exactly that. We had, like you said, the mailroom, we had the CEO, we had everyone in there. I mean, we collected probably 2,000 to 2,500 sheets and hand graded them at the time. So
Yep.
I echo that. That was crazy. And I didn't think of it as a networking tool, even though it had actually been. So today, what we're going to do on this podcast is we're going to talk about different strategies for different pools. I mean, the big one is the Super Bowl boxes pool. That's the one that everybody knows, and it's a little bit more luck of the draw. Then there's survivor pools for NFL. There's golf pools, and you're going to go through all of them. So without any further ado, what is the first type of pool you think is the most winnable, John?
Well, I want to go. Well, firstly, you mentioned like box pools.
Mm-hmm.
We throw those in the class of just those are pure luck, right? So it's pick. You have a 1 in 100 shot. Yeah, you have a 1 in 100 shot. Usually, if you're not familiar with a box pool, it's a 10 by 10 grid. There's 0 through 9 on the top of the grid, 0 through 9 on the side of the grid. You get a box. You look at the grid, see which numbers you have, and if you match the final digit of the score, you of course win the pot.
I mean, everybody's played that pool, so
we've all played that, and that's luck. Yeah. And then, of course, you play them in the Super Bowl because, at least I do, because it's a social thing, but I know people who get carried away. I would not get very carried away with those. I know people who play $5,000 to $10,000 worth of Super Bowl pools when the Super Bowl comes around. I've actually cut down on my Super Bowl pool participations just to the essential ones.
Yeah,
I've been doing for years.
The other big pool that I think that doesn't matter who you are, what you know about a sport, I think is the NCAA tournament men's basketball, women's basketball pool. I think would you say that's the second most popular?
That's probably, it's probably the second most popular, maybe the most popular. Yeah, both of those pools are the type of pools where you get the people who don't necessarily, they're not big sports fans. Some
Right.
people who don't even watch NCAA basketball, but they participate. And again, that's a great one to do in an office because especially, most corporations, most people have gone to college at this point,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people just want to participate because their school is in it or whatever it is. So that is a great way to network.
And that one would be the opposite of the Super Bowl pool, where
Yes.
that one actually has strategy and skill.
That was, and we're gonna do. We planned on it, and this year, if you're watching this here in 2020, obviously the NCAA tournament was was canceled this year, and we plan on doing a whole big podcast on the NCAA tournament and how to do it, and we'll go into a lot more detail next year. Hopefully the tournament goes off. There's a ton of different strategy involved, but I'm going to give you some strategies that you can really use in most pools, because you have to, it's hard to give a generalization when you don't have a specific pool. But what I want to touch on is, and we could start with the NCAA pool, is game theory. Before I even get to that, the first thing you want to do, and this happens in the NCAA tournament pools a lot, the bracket type of pools, is understand the rules. And this sounds, this is the boring part. I give you guys a lot of the boring, mundane stuff like bankroll management and things like that, but it's really important. I wouldn't mention it if these things weren't important.
Anyone tuning into a sports betting live stream does not think these things are mundane. I can assure you that these are people that are actually interested in the nuances and the details. And very few people, I know you think that because you live and breathe and eat this stuff every day, very few people actually have the type of insight and the results that you've had. So that's why I think don't undersell it by saying it's boring details, because this is the stuff I'm interested in, and I'm the casual pool player.
I actually feel bad when I play these pools, and this is I try not to I try not to brag on myself much, but office pools are the softest type of betting you can possibly do, because again, we're dealing with people. This is a casual thing, and everyone's just looking to have some fun. But if you're serious about it and you want to actually win these things, that you have a huge EV in most of these pools if you are sharp. And there's really easy ways to be sharp about this. So again, first things first, read all the rules. A lot of these are being the rules are being written by, again, someone who's doing this casually. They just wanted to run a pool, and oftentimes you'll be able to find ways to exploit the rules of a pool in your favor. It's not cheating. Those are the rules, but they can be exploitable. My brother's really good at this in fantasy leagues, by the way. And you could use that same mentality when you do fantasy leagues. A lot of times people will, they don't know how to write good rules in a fantasy league, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, whatever it is. And if you really sit down, take some time and think about the rules and where can I get an edge or an advantage in this pool or this league, you can do that. So I would.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So my question is, for example, when you're talking about exploiting rules, just from a fantasy football perspective, would that be like, okay, before you go into your draft, look how many points the passing touchdowns are worth for the quarterbacks. And if the quarterbacks are only getting 4 points per touchdown, you may want to focus on like the running quarterbacks, since they get 6 and they run in 10 a year, the Cam Newton, something like that.
Yeah, 100%. Or is it a 2 quarterback league?
Right. Okay. Something as basic as that. Right. Okay. Right. I got you.
Or in baseball, are they putting an innings? Is there an innings limit? Well, if there's no innings limit, you might want to start streaming pitchers, and do that. So
okay.
Again,
so I understand. It's basic. It's not even the nuance of the rules.
No. Yeah. You don't even have to look that deep sometimes. But when you do these pools, so understand the rules of the pool. Go over that, because then you could come up with your strategy as to how you're going to attack these things. So that's really basic on the rules. And of course, if anyone has any specific type of pool and they want to either send add a comment or talk to us in the Slack chats over at SportsBetArmy or DFS Army, by all means, hit me up. It's because every pool is going to be a little different, and there's going to be strategies for each one. So I want to get that out of the way. Like, now we've looked at the rules. Now for a lot of these pools, I use the Vegas odds or the offshore odds or whatever they are, if it's pertinent to that particular pool. Now, if we're talking about a pool, well, we could use this too. But if we're talking about, let's say, your typical NFL pool where you're just going to pick the 15, 16 games on the slate that week, and whoever picks the most, that's a little hard to use Vegas.
Right. Use the super contest in Vegas. You have to basically pick your favorite 5 games a week, and those are the ones. And each week you go 5-0, 4-1, 3-2, etc. So
now in a pool like that, there's always going to be some strategy, but basically you really just have to outpick Vegas.
All right. So then use the NCAA, because nobody knows. You see these records.
Yeah. In the NCAA now, if you're doing an NCAA pool, a bracket pool, the structure of that pool is going to be everything. Okay, I run a bracket pool where you multiply the seed. Yeah, every round gets a point value: 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and 32 for each round that you get.
I think that's pretty standard nowadays. Like you get.
Yeah, most do that. Some just give you a point per win, or you get 2 points per win. It doesn't matter what the seed is. So I have a points per round, and then you multiply that by the seed. If the 15 seed wins game 1, you get 15 points.
It's enticing you to take underdogs.
That's right.
Okay.
So you have to know that, because I'm going to pick way differently in a pool like that. I'm going to be more inclined to take the, a 13 seed against a 4 seed. I'm now getting 3 times the points on that team. Again, if I have a 5 seed that I only like to win 1 game and I think they're going to lose in the second round, well, maybe I'll be inclined to just take the 12 seed in that first game because of the point differential. Now, here's where you can use Las Vegas or the odds. And we'll stick to NCAA pools. And again, I don't want to get everything specifically to one type of pool, but here's where we could use odds in a pool where those pools you're not picking against the point spread. So let's use the point spread to our advantage. There are many occasions where the 10 seed, the 11 seed, even sometimes the 12 seed is a favorite in a game, or they're only a 1 or 2 point underdog. You'll see 13 seeds that are 4 point underdogs. In a pool where you're getting credit for taking an underdog, and especially if you're getting 13 points like in my pool compared to 4, and you're dealing with a 4 point underdog as a 13 seed, well, then you have to take that 13 seed, because that 4 points, that team's going to win, 40. I'm doing it off the top of my head. Let's say 44, 43% of the time, something like that. Well, it's crazy. I'm getting 4 times the amount of points for that pick, right? On a pick that's close to being a coin flip. So use the Vegas odds whenever you do a pool like this. Then the other thing you want to do is what I was talking about is game theory. When you're in a pool, if you're some people are in a very small pool, it's 10 people. Let's say for the NCAA tournament, it's a 10-person pool. You're going to pick a lot differently in a 10-person pool as you would in a 100-person pool.
Right.
If you're a daily fantasy player and you understand this, right? Because it's the equivalent of playing cash games as opposed to playing in GPPs. In GPPs, we're going to take more chances. We're going to take a few more picks that maybe other people won't have. Specifically in an NCAA pool, what I like to do in the bracket pool, if there's if it's 50, 100-person or more type of pool, is look at who's picked. If you go to ESPN, I'm not going to get into too deep into this, but if you go to ESPN, they tell you the percentages each team is picked to advance to each round, and we'll get into this again during the tournament. You could look at that, and you'll know if you have 100 people in your pool, you're going to have, and a team is picked 13% overall on ESPN. Well, you can imagine that team's going to be about somewhere between 10 and 15 people in your pool are going to take that team.
So you're talking about
Vegas odds.
You're talking about like low owned, right? Low owned is.
It's going to be the equivalent, but what you're doing is, so in an NCAA pool, you're going to take, let's say a team is 13% being taken in ESPN, and Vegas odds have them as a 25% chance of winning. We're making up some numbers here. If they have a 25% chance of winning and only 13% of the public is taking that team, well, then you're going to want to take them in your pool, because now we have to use the Vegas odds to our advantage here. We're not trying to beat the Vegas odds. We're trying to beat our pool. And if the odds don't match up to what the public is thinking as far as picks, it may be a team that they don't necessarily like. I'll give you one example. And you talk about like your grandmothers and my mom plays the NCAA pool. I've been running a pool for years. Like I said, the NCAA pool, we had about 125 entries in that pool. My mother had one of the greatest picking pool. I mean, she picked, so there's 63 games. I think she picked 55 correctly.
Oh my God.
and lost to me. She lost the pool. I won the pool. The reason being, it was the year that Kentucky was undefeated that year, and then lost in the final.
How long ago was it about?
What was it? 3-4 years ago when they were undefeated.
Okay. Right.
and then they lost in the they lost who they lose to, Wisconsin.
I don't recall it. I'm always so bad at those pools. I block them out.
So I believe they lost. I believe they lost to Wisconsin. Someone will correct me. I'm forgetting now, but they lost in the Final Four. So if you looked at the Vegas odds, they were giving the probability of Kentucky winning was, I don't know, 25-30%, something like that. But if you looked at the pool, because they were undefeated, if you looked at the percentage of people taking them in pools, it was like 40 to 50% they were being taken because they were undefeated. So in a pool of 100 and 125 people, it wasn't that I knew anything.
Right.
I took the second best team, which was Duke. Right. So I took the next best team because they were being undervalued.
Right.
And sure enough, they won. And my mom, who picked phenomenal throughout the entire pool, she had Kentucky. So she was in a great spot because she had picked so well through the tournament, and she had the favorite. But I had a shot because I took the second best team.
So if I'm getting this straight, for example, like when you're talking about like an NCAA pool, if you pick a 1 or 2 seed, you're most likely to have the correct winner, but you could be you're giving yourself a less likely chance to win the pool because you need to get so much more correct. You need to be that much more accurate. Whereas if you pick like a 5 seed, I'm just using that number arbitrarily, that obviously your chances of getting it right are lower, but if things do break right, you'll probably win the whole pool because it's a lower ownership. Do I have that right?
That's right. And
okay.
Usually you won't have to go that deep to a 5 seed. Like
in
this case, I believe. No, I know what you're saying. In this, I believe Duke was a 1 seed, but they were just another. They were just like I said, they were just being undervalued because everyone was taking Kentucky. You'll see it a lot of times. You just need a 2 seed. You're talking about double the points on a team that might be very close. You may have 2 teams. A 1 seed is like a 10 to 15% chance of winning the tournament, and so is a 2 seed. And you go and look at ESPN, and you're like, well, this 1 seed is being taken in 15% of pools, and this 2 seed is being taken in 5%. Well, you want to take we're not trying. I understand what in sports betting and in office pools and everything, we want to. There's an ego involved in these things. We talk about this all the time. Like, I check my ego at the door. I don't know anything more than anyone else does. That's my logic. I'm just going to try to figure out how to beat this. I can't tell you. I am pretty confident that Dick Vitale and all those guys, they've watched a whole lot more of those games than I have. And they don't ever pick right. You watch them pick, and they just pick 4-1 seeds. And
also,
those are the best
sample
teams.
Yeah, and it's also the sample size. And like we've talked about this on the podcast before, that if I was in a 3-point shooting contest with Steph Curry and we only each got 1 shot, I mean, my chances of beating Steph Curry in a 3-point contest are a lot better than if we were taking 50 shots. I mean, when it's one and done, anything can happen. So that's accuracy is going to, you're going to take the better team for your probability, but your accuracy is going to be volatile, to say the least.
Of course. So yeah, you want to. That's why playing playing in a lot of pools, and if you're giving yourself an advantage, you're not going to win everything, but the more you play in, of course, the more you're going to win if you are positive EV in these things. So if you're sharp, you should be positive EV. This is why in daily fantasy, year-long fantasy, I have arguments with people. I'm like, you could play 10 years of fantasy football with the same group of guys and not win, and that doesn't mean not win a championship. It really doesn't mean you weren't good. It's only 10. That's like playing. If you played 10 days of DFS in the NBA and didn't win, you would just kind of, okay, that's the way it goes, right? But 10 years in daily fantasy, if you didn't win, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad player. It's really not that big a sample size. So yes, you want to play a lot when you have an advantage. The more you play with an edge, of course, the more you're going to win. And I really want to harp on the Vegas odds, though. I don't want to get too deep into one specific type of pool like the NCAA pool. The biggest, I would say the newest and most popular type of pools now are golf pools. I don't know if you're getting I don't think you're a big golf guy, but I don't know if golf pools are coming across your desk much.
Yeah, well, you hit it right on the head. I'm not a big golf guy, but because the pools are so interesting, I have been, dabbling. They people have asked me, they've explained to me, and it does, and I'm able to kind of grasp it. But I'm flying blind with this stuff.
Well, here's the thing. I've been in so many different types of pools, and now I'm in. It's probably the most pools I play in now are golf pools, and just they're becoming hugely popular. I'll give you a few different examples. I'm in one that's a season-long pool. You pick, and you'll see this a lot with golf. They'll put golfers in certain groups, and then you have to pick 1, 2, 3, however many golfers from each group. And usually, of course, Group A or Group 1 is going to be your top golfers, and then so on and so forth.
Also, gotcha.
I'm in a pool that's you pick. It's 20-something golfers you pick for the entire season, and it's based on how much they earn. Their earnings for the season.
Right, that determines their value, right?
Determines their value. So if they win $1 million in the tournament, you get $1 million towards your points. You get $1 million in points. So
I like that.
I someone brought this pool to me. It was a buddy of mine. It's a monstrous pool. He brought this pool to me because he's like, hey, we'll go partners on this because I know you know golf and whatever. So how would you tackle something like you basically got the entire world of golf to choose from. You've got all these different groups. It's something like, I don't know, let's say 15 groups and 20 some odd golfers that you have to pick from. How would you tackle that? You could pick the golfers, you've got the groups, you've got the golfers, and it's a season long thing. So you don't touch it. You pick them in the beginning, let's say January, you pick them, and then you move on. Like, do you have any idea like what you would do if you were?
So you're asking, okay. So obviously my first thought is the donkey just picks the high earners and goes for the high points. And again, I always think like that. My first thought on how I would play it is always probably the square to play. Go ahead.
When you say high earners, you're going to look at like the guys from last year and like how they did last year, like,
right? Yeah, basically, because I know in fantasy football, the worst thing to do is say, oh, how many fantasy points did this guy score last year? Because situations change. So
sure.
Just knowing that was my first thought, and those were my first thoughts when I started playing fantasy basketball and football. I'm assuming that's the wrong way to do it.
Yeah. So what I do is, again, I use Las Vegas. I use the odds.
See, smart.
Right? Because if you can ever use the odds, and there's no odds specifically for this type of a pool, but now you have to just kind of
like their odds to win. You're saying, right? So
they've got odds to win starting like now. There's always odds to win future major events. So I'll look at it from I'll look at the odds for the U.S. Open. They also have odds for the FedEx Points, which is a playoff system for golf. So you could do that, but depending on like what my particular case, the pool starts after the season starts, and then those odds fluctuate because as people win tournaments, their odds are going to come down if they win. So it's not perfect. It doesn't perfectly fit that league. But so what I'll do is I'll take the U.S. Open odds, where I know every golfer from this sheet of, let's say, 100 some odd golfers that I have to choose from, they're all going to have odds for the U.S. Open, which is traditionally, it's a June event. So we're here in January. So that's going to give me a fair idea of who the best golfers are in the world.
Do you assign like your own algorithm, like percentage or anything like that to them? Like, or how do you go? What do you do from there?
So now I got the list. So I'm going to copy. So I'll go to pick your offshore sports book, accumulate a list of the odds on each of these to win the U.S. Open. If you really want to do it properly, get a few different sports books, average them out. That's going to give you a good idea, and then rank them. And now you're going to know, okay, I've got Group 1 is Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas, Brooks Koepka, so on and so on. And I've got to pick 2 of these guys. Well, just take the 2 guys who have the lowest odds to win the U.S. Open because they're pretty much going to...
The 2 favorites.
The 2 favorites.
Right.
And then my Group 2 is now, Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods and and I've got to pick one of these guys. Well, just go ahead and just pick the favorites. I did that last year. I put 2 entries in. So with 2 entries, I'll mix it up. I'm not going to use obviously the same exact guys. If there's if you're doing multiple entries in these things, if there's someone who's just so far above everyone else in his group, then I would use that person in as many entries as I could.
Is it because golfers generally do what they're supposed to do? Like the favorites generally win, or is that why you gravitate to the favorites? Why is that? Because you would think
because
go ahead. You explain.
Well, because the reason is we've talked about wisdom in the crowds, right? There is no better. Just to briefly, what wisdom of the crowd is there's a good book called Wisdom of the Crowd. You can buy it, audio, or read it. It's a good read. And this concept came about, I believe, over 100 years ago, where there was a fair, like a county fair, something like that, and you won a prize. You won this ox. If you could guess the weight of the ox, you won the ox. And as the story goes, they got, let's say, 100, 200 people to guess the weight of this ox. No one person was closer than the average of all the guesses. So the average gets close. It's the same thing with how many marbles are in a jar, that sort of thing. So there's a wisdom of the crowd. There's no better wisdom of the crowd other outside of the stock market, which is taking a huge volume of people and different ideas and coming up with a price, which is why it's very hard to beat the stock market. It's very hard to beat the indexes.
Yeah, ADP in any fantasy sport is the wisdom of crowds, isn't it?
That's 100%. Yeah. Now, again, in your fantasies, that works really well in the first few rounds, but then
ADP goes
after
up
that.
As you get further down the draft, ADP is out the window because there's
a lot of differences in scoring. You've got different types of rules, and then you've got there's reasons for it. But
your top 75, your top 50 guys,
100%, because it's a wisdom of the crowd mentality, and it's very hard in the long run to beat ADP.
Right.
Okay. No matter how good your projections are. So again, when we go to wisdom of the crowd, one of the other great wisdom of the crowd, and to figure out who's going to win or percentages and probabilities, is the Vegas odds. So if I that's why I want to utilize Vegas odds in office pools as much as I possibly can. We talked about it in the NCAA tournament. When we're doing a golf pool, I'm just going to go straight to I'm going straight to the odds, and I'm looking at the odds, and I'm not going to sway off it. I've won. So last year I won the first half of that pool. They give a half, first half, and they give a second half. This year, right now, I'm winning that pool. There's a couple hundred people in it. I'm in first place right now as we speak in that pool after we're just coming off the PGA Championship. I have Morikawa. A lot of people didn't know who he was. But if you looked at the odds before the season, in his group, he was one of the best players in his group, one of the best golfers in his group. But a lot of people wouldn't know who Morikawa was. A lot of people didn't know who he was until he just won last weekend. Okay, so you could utilize these things. It especially is going to help you with the younger golfers coming up, because you're going to look at last year. They didn't do anything. It's like drafting. It's like trying to draft off of last year's stats, but you've got a rookie coming into the league. Well, if you don't know anything about the rookie, you're just going to pass him by. All right, so we do that. I've been in home run pools. Well, if you're in a home run pool, where should you be looking? I go to the Vegas lines. I go to the offshore lines, and I look at what the home run total, because they'll have props, and that's what I wanted to mention also. There are so many different prop bets out there now, and it's getting more and more, that a lot of them can fit into your pool. If you're doing a home run type of pool, they've got a list of a ton of players, and what their total is, their over-under on home runs. You might have touchdowns or things like that. Different types of pools.
Are prop bet pools generally soft? Are they a little more sharp, or like?
Most of your office pools are going to be way softer than anything you're going to play in fantasy, and certainly betting again, or daily fantasy, I should say, and certainly in betting straight with the bookie.
Okay.
Right. These are just going to be softer, and so this is why you can play the fit. You can be chalky in a lot of these pools and win.
See, okay, there you go. So that is a good actionable takeaway for anyone listening to this podcast, because I myself try to be, sneaky sharp in these office pools, and I fade the obvious, and that is a mistake. And I realized, because I don't win those pools. So if just kind of just trust in yourself. If you're listening to this podcast, obviously you're a little bit sharper, you know what's going on, and just go with what you know is most likely to win you the pool. What's most likely to be true. Is that what you're saying?
100%. I'm in a golf pool, another golf pool that's just for the majors. And the way that pool works is, again, it's 4 groups, group A, B, C, and D, and it's a lot of golfers in each group. And you've got to pick either 2, 3, or 4 from each group, depending on which group it is, right? And again, I'll take every golfer right before. I just did this for the PGA Championship. Take every golfer and in the group, assign their odds. Go to Vegas, look at their odds, and then just take the best golfers from that group. If you're doing multiple, like I'll put a few entries in, then you're going to mix it up and you're going to take you'll take the next best and so on and so forth. But I won. They do it for the majors and some of the bigger tournaments. The Memorial was a few weeks ago. I didn't win first place, but I cashed. I cashed in there for a decent amount, and it was my A lineup, which was all I did was take the top people based on the Vegas odds and put that in. I've done it twice. I won that pool last year, I believe, the Masters, and it was just taking the best Vegas odds people in each one of those each one of those groups. So utilize the odds, even if they don't specifically, it's not. Sometimes you're going to have to do a little bit of extrapolation, but use the odds, use Vegas, use the wisdom of the crowds to make yourself smarter. You don't even, if you gave me a pool on something I've never, a sport that I've never seen, if you gave me a cricket pool, and I don't know anything about cricket, but if you give me the rules and then just give me a little bit of understanding and some sort of pool, and I can get some Vegas odds on it, I'll probably be able to compete.
Okay, so for you know what I always think, like, people want, and they want the headline. Give me 3 bullet points that are general rules that may seem obvious to you, but I'm telling you, anyone playing their office pool may just, if they can keep a mindset of these 3 things that you're about to list off, what is a way to approach a pool? How would you headline? Bullet point 1, bullet point 2, bullet point 3.
Number 1 is totally understand all of the rules. See if there's anything that you can exploit within them. Okay, that's number 1, first and foremost. 2, then figure out how many entries are going to be in this pool. Do I need to play? Do I need a little game theory like we do in DFS? Do I need to look in like the NCAA tournament? Do I need to maybe take the second or third choice because the market's going to be way above the first? Way too overvaluing the top choice and undervaluing maybe the second and third. So have that in your mind as well. And then 3, and maybe the most important, is utilize Vegas offshore sports books. Utilize those odds. They are going to be sharper than anything you can create on your own. There's a reason they're really difficult to beat. There's a reason it's hard to beat the bookie, because those odds are comprised of everyone betting, and the lines move to get an equilibrium. So utilize those odds in your pool, Vegas odds, and if you have a specific type of pool that you're interested in, drop us a note, comment, whatever it is, and I'll be happy to add some advice to you if I could.
So those are 3 excellent bullet points on how to do it. And if you have any specific questions, as John said, come over to SportsBetArmy. Use code Bookie, right? What's the code right now to get 20% off? Is it Stat Bookie? What is it? Let's make sure we give it right.
I believe it is. I believe they could use Statsational.
But okay, they could use Statsational or use
Bookie.
Or BTB. Beat the Bookie. BTB. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm glad that we have that our business in order there.
Yes.
So come over to SportsBetArmy. You have 3 lead coaches that you have direct access to. Use code BTB 20% off, or tweet stats at Statsational on Twitter, and John will let you know how to get a couple free months with a deposit on a selected sports book. So those are 2 ways to come over and join our community over there. You have passionate sports bettors. John, where can they find you? It's I just told them at Statsational on Twitter. Where else is a good spot to find you on social media?
Well, if you want to see some stuff that's not necessarily always related to sports betting, I do have an Instagram as well, Statsational, and I've got pictures of some houses that I've been flipping. So yeah, if you want to take a look at that,
cool.
But yeah, the Twitter's for the gambling stuff.
Cool. And I'm at Alan Seslowski. It's in the description of this podcast, all things fantasy, and co-host right here with my friend John Alesia. All right, John, I think we did it again. We gave him another episode on how to beat your office pool. And we encourage you again to come on over to Sports Bet Army, where there's a lot of cool things going on. And for your DFS needs, season-long fantasy needs, we are at DFS Army. For my friend John Alesia, I am at Alan Seslowski. Until next time, we'll be back with another episode real soon. Bye-bye.